Hello everyone, viewers. We all think we know the story of the beginning. Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, a world taking its first few fragile steps. But there's a chapter in that story, a few short verses tucked away in the Book of Genesis, that hints at a history far stranger, far more terrifying than most of us have ever been told. It's a story of a cosmic crime, of a forbidden union that nearly unmade create. The Bible says, when man began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of man were attractive, and they took as their wives any they chose. It then speaks of giants, the Nephilim, who were on the earth in those days. Who were these sons of God? And what was so catastrophic about their love for human women that it provoked a wrath that would drown the world? The answer isn't. In the dawn of time, after the gates of Eden had been sealed by a flaming sword, humanity began to chart its course. Two paths diverged, two bloodlines flowing from the first family. There was the line of Cain, the first murderer, his hands stained with a brother's blood. His descendants were builders, innovators, craftsmen of bronze and iron. They built the first city, they composed the first city. They looked to the earth beneath their feet, their legacy written in stone and steel. Then there was the line of Seth, the son given to Adam and Eve to replace the righteous Abel. His was a different path. The scriptures say that in the days of his son Enoch, men began to call upon the name of the Lord. Their city was not of this world. Their ambition was turned towards the heavens. They were shepherds, stargazers, mystics. They walked with. For a time, these two streams of humanity flowed separately, one of earthly power, the other of heavenly devotion. The world was young, vibrant, a grand experiment unfolding under the watchful eyes of heaven. And there were indeed watchers, not just the singular, all-seeing eye of God, but a host of celestial beings, angels assigned to observe the fledgling human race. They were beings of light and fire, woven from the very fabric of eternity, their existence a song of praise to their Creator. Their duty was simple: to watch, to guard, to report, but never to interfere. They were stationed at the farthest outposts of heaven, gazing down upon the jewel of earth as it spun in the void. They saw empires rise and fall in the blink of their immortal eyes. They saw love and hate, birth and... But proximity breeds curiosity, and curiosity, untempered by wisdom, can be a dangerous thing. Among this legion of watchers, a seed of fascination began to sprout. They looked down from their cold, perfect, ethereal plane, and they saw the daughters of men. They saw them not as abstract creations, but as living, breathing beings. They saw the warmth of their skin, the light in them. They saw the fierce, beautiful, fleeting passion of mortal life, a stark contrast to their own unending, unchanging existence. A longing began to stir, a strange and alien emotion they had never known. It was a poison seeping into their perfect natures. Their leader, a powerful angel named Semjaza, was the first to feel its full, potent force. He saw the grace in their movements. He was a commander, a being of immense power and authority. Yet he found himself utterly captivated by these fragile creatures of dust. This fascination festered into a desire, a lust that was a perversion of their divine purpose. They were made to love God, not to covet his creations. Semjaza wrestled with this new, terrifying impulse. He knew it was wrong. He knew it was He shared his thoughts with his fellow watchers, 200 of the highest-ranking angelic governors. He spoke not of love, but of a shared temptation, a dark curiosity that had taken root in all of them. "I fear," he told them, his voice echoing in the celestial spheres, "that I will be the only one to pay the price for this great sin." But he was not alone. The poison had spread. The other watchers felt it too. They wanted to participate. A decision was made. A conspiracy hatched on the very borders of heaven. It was Azazel, another powerful leader among them, who solidified their resolve. He was ambitious, proud, and saw this as an opportunity not just for pleasure, but for power. They would not just visit the earth. They would rule it. They would share their heavenly knowledge, and in return, take what they desired. So they made a pact, a terrible oath binding them all to the same fate. They called down curses upon themselves that if any should turn back, they would all bear the punishment. It was a mutiny, a celestial rebellion born not of pride in the vein of Lucifer's ancient fall, but of a strange and twisted lust. Then they descended. It was not a fall in the way Lucifer had been cast down, a violent expulsion. Imagine the sight, 200 beings of light, shedding their ethereal forms, casting aside their divine glory, and taking on bodies of flesh. They plunged through the atmosphere like a shower of falling stars, a wave of cosmic energy crashing into the material world. When they walked among men, they were like gods. They were beautiful, charismatic, and possessed knowledge that seemed like magic to the fledgling human race. It's easy to imagine this as a violent act, and in many ways it was a profound violation. But the ancient texts also hint at a seduction. These were not monsters in their initial appearance. They were beings of light, offering secrets of the cosmos, promising a connection to the divine. They chose the most beautiful, the most desirable of the women, from both the line of Cain and the line of Seth. The divine order was these unions were an abomination, a twisting of God's created order. Spirit was meant for spirit, flesh for flesh. This mingling was a deep ontological crime, and it would bear monstrous fruit. The women who lay with the watchers conceived, but their children were not human. They were something else entirely. They were the Nephilim. The name itself means the fallen ones, but it has also been from birth they were unnaturally large, possessing a strength that dwarfed any mortal man. They were hybrids caught between two worlds, possessing the physical power and immortal spirit of their angelic fathers, and the flesh and blood mortality of their human mothers. At first, humanity may have looked upon them with awe. These were the children of the gods, demigods walking the earth. They were heroes, warriors of great renown. The Nephilim had an insatiable appetite. Their hunger was a reflection of the unnatural lust that had conceived them. They devoured all the resources of the earth. They consumed the grain from the fields, the cattle from the pastures, the fish from the rivers. The work of human hands, all the toil and sweat of generations, was not enough to satisfy them. The world's economy, its entire ecosystem, began to cut. When all the food produced by man was gone, they turned on the animals, hunting species to extinction. When the animals were gone, they turned on each other, a horrifying display of cannibalistic fury. And when they grew tired of that, they turned on the source of their frustration, the small, fragile humans who scurried in their shadows. The age of the Nephilim was an age of blood and terror. They were cruel masters, their power the world that God had created, the world he had called good, was transformed into a living hell. The cries of the oppressed, the screams of the dying, the lament of a world being devoured, began to rise up from the earth. But the corruption wasn't just physical. The fallen watchers did not just satisfy their lust, they fulfilled their pact to share their knowledge. This was perhaps their greatest sin. They gave Azazel, the proud and ambitious one, taught men the art of war. He showed them how to forge swords, shields, and breastplates. He revealed the secrets of metallurgy, turning the earth's metals into instruments of death. Before this, conflict was crude. Now it was systematic, efficient, and deadly. He also taught women the art of deception. As the texts say, he showed them how to. It was knowledge that fostered vanity, jealousy, and promiscuity. It was a way of beautifying the flesh while the soul rotted from within. Semjaza, their leader, taught the arts of enchantment and root, cutting, the secrets of sorcery and potions that could manipulate the will of others. Other watchers taught astrology, the practice of seeking guidance from the stars rather than from God. They revealed the signs of the moon, and they taught humanity how to make war, how to practice magic, how to lie, how to cheat, how to lust. They took the simple, nascent evil that existed in the hearts of men and gave it the tools of heaven. The result was a total societal collapse. Violence became the only law. Might made right. The world descended into a vortex of depravity. The lines between the descendants of Cain and Seth, the world was groaning under the weight of this sin. It was a symphony of chaos, a planet drowning in its own blood and wickedness. It's hard for us to imagine such a world where 10-foot-tall giants roam the land, where magic is real, and where fallen angels are the kings and teachers of humanity. If you are finding this untold story as fascinating and terrifying as I am, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps. Yes, a world on the brink of total annihilation, screaming into the void. And heaven heard The cries of humanity, the blood of the innocent soaking the soil, reached the throne of God. The archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael, looked down from their posts and saw the devastation. They saw the blood, the injustice, the complete perversion of the divine plan. They went before the Most High, their voices a chorus of celestial grief. "You see what Azazel has done," they said, "how he has taught all unrighteousness on earth and revealed the eternal secrets which were made in heaven." They spoke of the giants, the Nephilim, who had filled the earth with blood. They spoke of the forbidden unions and the suffering of the daughters of men. They presented the case, the evidence of God's response was not one of surprised anger, but of profound sorrow. He had seen it all. His heart was filled with pain for the creation he loved. The experiment of humanity had been hijacked, corrupted from within and without. The divine image in man was almost entirely erased, replaced by a monstrous caricature of violence and lust. A judgment was decided. It would be swift, total, and their punishment was to be a terrifying reflection of their crime. They had lusted after the temporary, the fleshly. So they would be bound, imprisoned in the material world they so desired, but stripped of all its pleasures. God spoke to the archangel Raphael, "Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness. Make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudale, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light." Azazel, the one who taught men to make weapons of shining metal and women to adorn themselves with bright colors, was sentenced to an eternity of blackness and crushing weight. He would become a scapegoat, a symbol of the sin that had been cast out. To the other watchers, "Go bind Semjaza and his associates, who have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of their consummation." They were to be made to watch as their monstrous children then they would be imprisoned in the earth, bound in chains of darkness, forced to wait for millennia for a final judgment they knew they could not escape. It was a chilling sentence. Their immortality was not taken away. It was turned into an instrument of torture, an unending experience of their own failure and damnation. To deliver this message, God chose a man, not a warrior, not a king, but a man who, the scriptures say simply that Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. But the ancient traditions, like the Book of Enoch, fill in the details. Enoch was a scribe, a prophet, a man who had been given visions of the heavenly realms. He was chosen to be the messenger of doom to the fallen angels. Imagine the scene, a mortal man, Enoch, standing before 200 fallen. Enoch read to them the verdict from the throne of God. He spoke of their binding, their imprisonment, their eternal separation from the heaven they had so casually abandoned. The text says they were terrified. They wept. They begged Enoch to write a petition for them, to plead their case before God for forgiveness. Enoch did as they asked. He wrote down their plea, but as he was reading it, he fell asleep and had a vision. "You should intercede for men, and not men for you," God told him. They had been celestial beings meant to guide and protect humanity. They had abandoned their post, violated their nature, and corrupted the very thing they were sworn to watch over. There was no going back. Their judgment was sealed. Next, the judgment for their offspring, the Nephilim. They were an abomination, a dead end in the story of creation. Brother would turn against brother, giant against giant, until they had annihilated one another in a frenzy of violence. Their physical bodies would be destroyed, but what of their spirits? They were part angelic, part human. They did not belong in heaven, nor could they be fully consigned to the place of the dead like human souls, so a different fate was decreed for them. Their spirits, once freed from their giant, they would become the evil spirits, the demons that would plague, corrupt, and torment humanity until the final judgment. This is a crucial point. The story of the Watchers and the Nephilim provides a powerful origin story for demons. They are not simply fallen angels themselves, but the disembodied, malignant spirits of their monstrous offspring, forever hungry, forever destructive. Their legacy of chaos would continue long after their bodies had turned to dust. Finally, there was the judgment for humanity and the earth itself. The corruption was too deep. The sin had soaked into the very soil. The bloodline of man was tainted, his soul given over to the teachings of the fallen. A simple reset was not enough. The world needed to be washed clean. It needed to be baptized in water. I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repenteth me that I have made them. All of creation had been corrupted by this single catastrophic event. But even in this pronouncement of total destruction, there was a sliver of grace. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Amid one small flicker of the light of Seth's lineage had not been extinguished. Noah would be the seed of a new beginning. He was given the instructions for the ark, a vessel that would carry the future of life through the storm of God's judgment. The story of the flood is often told as a standalone event, a story about a wicked world and a righteous man. But when you place it in the context of the Watchers and the Nephilim, it was a direct, necessary surgical response to a specific cosmic catastrophe. It was the only way to eradicate the genetic and spiritual contamination of the Nephilim and to cleanse the earth of the forbidden knowledge that had been unleashed. The rains came. The fountains of the great deep burst forth. The windows of heaven were opened for 40 days and 40 nights. The world was unmade. The corrupt civilizations built on forbidden knowledge were washed away. The earth was silent, save for the sound of water and the creaking of a single wooden ark floating on the endless ocean. When the waters receded, Noah and his family stepped out onto a clean world. It was a new beginning, a second chance for humanity. The covenant of the rainbow was established, a promise that God would never again destroy the world with water. But the spirits of the Nephilim, the demons, were still present, whispering temptations into the ears of the new generation. And there are strange verses even after the flood that hint that the problem wasn't entirely solved. When the Israelite spies are sent into the land of Canaan centuries later, they come back with a terrifying report. They say, "And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seen the flood was meant to wipe them out." Some have suggested that the genetic taint may have been carried through on the ark, perhaps through one of Noah's daughters. In law, others suggest that the term Nephilim became a broader term for fearsome, giant, like warrior tribes. The Bible speaks of the Rephaim, the Zuzim, the Emim, all races of giants that the Israelites had to face. And of course, there is the most famous giant of all, Goliath, the champion of the Philistines, who stood over 9 feet tall. Was he a distant descendant, a genetic echo of that first unholy union? The text doesn't explicitly say, but the shadow of Genesis 6 is long. It suggests that the consequence of the Watcher's sin continued to ripple through human history, a lingering corruption that had to be confronted. It's a powerful mythic exploration of boundaries. It's a story about the catastrophic consequences of blurring the lines that God has established. The line between heaven and earth, between the divine and the human. The Watchers were not content with their place. They coveted what was not theirs, and in taking it, they unleashed a torrent of suffering upon the world and eternal damnation upon themselves. Metallurgy, astronomy, agriculture, these are things we value. But it was given too soon, without the wisdom or moral framework to handle it. It was knowledge without godliness, power without restraint, and it led directly to humanity's near-total self-destruction. This ancient story serves as a profound warning. It reminds us that temptation often comes disguised as something beautiful, desirable, and enlightening, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and the shortcuts to power and pleasure often lead over a cliff. The story of the sons of God and the daughters of men is more than just an obscure biblical footnote. It is the prequel to the Great Flood. It is the origin story of demons. It is a cautionary tale about the cosmic battle between order and chaos, a battle that continues to be fought in the world around us and within. It's a reminder that the world is more complex, more mysterious, and more spiritually charged than we often realize. There are forces at play beyond our immediate senses, and the choices we make have consequences that can echo through generations. It frames the entire narrative of the Old Testament in a new light, showing that the fight against paganism, idolatry, and strange gods was not just a cultural battle, but a spiritual. It's a dark, troubling, and majestic story, one that fills in the gaps and explains the sheer necessity of one of the Bible's most terrifying events. Alright, that is all for today's video. We've journeyed back to the world before the flood, to a time of angels and giants, sin and judgment. If you liked this video and want to explore more of the hidden stories within scripture and history, please subscribe to the channel and give this